Well, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us to the third and last roundtable we organized this week to discuss the role and the future for culture in this pandemic era. I am Valérie Quilles. I'm the cultural attaché of Luxembourg in France and also a board member of the FICEP, who has been organizing these events. The FICEP, Forum des Instituts Culturels Étrangers à Paris, is a unique association in the world, created in 2002, and now gathering 56 international cultural centers from all over the world and all based in Paris. Since years, the FICEP has created a real space for multilateral reflection on culture, a space to promote and enhance cultural and linguistic diversity, and above all, share practices, best practices. After the roundtables of the past 2 days, the first one on the new experiences and institutional changes, and the second one on the place of culture in society and public policies during the crisis, we will now discuss and focus on the role of foreign cultural centers in the current mobility challenge. I would like to thank very much the director of the FICEP, Bérénice Dijac, and her assistant Solène Lognonnet for the perfect coordination of this event. Thank also to our supports, the City of Paris and the Ministry of Culture of France. And thank you, of course, to the participants for accepting this invitation. And last but not least, I would like to thank and briefly introduce Fergus Okoranshaw, who will chair this roundtable. Fergus Okoranshaw is a choreographer and dance artist. Is frequently collaborating with artists and experts from other disciplines. His film and live performances that have been seen across the world create frameworks for audiences and artists to build communities together. He is currently leading a project with Micro Rainbow International, providing dance workshops for creative and social inclusion to LGBT refugees and asylum seekers. From 2018 to 2020, he was artistic director of national dance company Wales. And since 2019, he's deputy chair of the Arts Council of Ireland. So Fergus, thank you so much. And now I will let you the virtual stage.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be able to be part of this discussion today. And thank you for that introduction. As an artist, I speak to you today from the Centre Culturel Irlandais in Paris, where I've just arrived. So I already am an artist who understands intimately the value of cultural centers, international cultural institutes within for the life of artists and for the audiences that they connect to. So I'm really happy today that we have this opportunity to hear from a number of different kinds of institutes and centers about their experience, not just of the pandemic, but of sort of changing climate in general and how it might impact on their work going forward. Our plan for today is that I'm going to invite all of the speakers to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their context briefly. And then we'll have a short discussion between ourselves on some of the issues involved, and then leave some space towards the end for questions from those of you that are joining us. So please do gather your questions and pose them to us in the Q&A function or in the chat, and we will try to address them before the end. I think this is an opportunity for us to hear good ideas, hear also the challenges where ideas where we don't have solutions yet, but where we're starting to tease out what the problems are and understand what the steps might be towards solutions. So without further ado, what I would like to do is to hand over maybe to invite Sandro to maybe introduce yourself, where you're working, the context, and then a little bit about the kind of cultural context in which you are responding to today's questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to everyone. So I'm working as a cultural attaché for the Italian Cultural Institute in Paris since the end of 2017. And the Italian Cultural Institute is a network of 83 institute all over the world in 50 countries, in 50 different countries. In France, there are 4. In Paris, in Marseille, Strasbourg, and Lyon. We have some collaboration, but also everyone keep a very specific identity related to their politics, not the general politics, but the program of events that they propose related to the town where they're based and the area. The mission of the Cultural Institute is to promote Italian culture and language. Regarding the situation where I'm working, the Italian Cultural Institute is promoting itself some activities in our spaces. And also we try to collaborate with the cultural institution of the town of Paris, but also of the region of north of France and part of the West. So we have several different collaboration with well-known theater institution that could be like, because we are trying to cover all differences, artistic expression, that means like from cinema, music, visual art, and dance, performing theater. And also we promote literature through meeting with the writers and organizing literature festival and participating to the fair and literature festival that can be in France, and also with a grant for the translation. So probably will be the topic of the next part, but would be interesting for me to especially in this specific moment during the pandemic era, to explain this politics of grant. Should I do it now or later on?
Why don't you take just a moment to kind of set that context?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. I don't know if you have any question to clarify something related to the mission of the Institute or my job.
Well, maybe just tell us what, for maybe an example, because I know, for example, that there's work coming up at the moment, particularly related to dance, but just to give us an example of one of the things that you're involved in at the moment, so we can kind of ground it.
Yeah, because as you are a choreographer, a dancer, I can't focus on our dance politics. So there is a collaboration with different theater and festival based in France. And for example, one of very famous contemporary dance group, and a second one directed by a young choreographer. They will be on the program of Théâtre des Chaillots at the middle of October, so in 2 weeks. And the famous one is at El Balletto, and they have like 5 venues. And the second one, Salvo Lombardo, with his show Excelsior, has 3 venues. Connected to the dance, we collaborate also with Rencontre Chorégraphique, that we are going to have a performance in middle of November. And it is a very good example of 2 different types of collaboration, because with Chaillot, the shows and the venues are part of their program. And one of them is going to the Excelsior one with the young choreographer is going to perform. Going to include some local performer dancers, and on the opposite. In addition, the Rencontre Chorégraphique, in this case, the festival, the institution, is a part of the institution that is going to sustain, to produce the venue. So we have like this difference, sometimes just to improve collaboration that the theater is going to host an event, or sometimes try to make like a collaboration and combination between French and Italian producer. I don't know if I can give you an idea. I lost the voice.
That's because I didn't unmute. Amateur mistake. No, thank you very much. I think we'll go to Vincent next. And I know, so Vincent, a different kind of context. So Sandro from a cultural institute, you're in a different situation, but give us a sense of what your context is.
I just had something that probably I forgot, that the Italian Cultural Institute is a part of the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So it is it's the cultural part of the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So we are under the embassy in Paris.
That's important policy.
Yes, yes.
Vincent, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for this invitation and for this talk. Indeed, my position is a bit different. So I'm the head of the residency department at Cité Internationale des Arts in Paris. So as you know, Cité Internationale des Arts is a residency center that welcomes artists from all over the world, from all the discipline and all the generation in Paris for residency from 2 months until 1 year. It's definitely true that since March and the beginning of the health crisis, we have been facing an uncommon, exceptional situation that question, in a sense, the very reason of our existence. Indeed, the Cité Internationale des Arts is one of the oldest residency centers because we have been created in 1965, and we are a private foundation. We are not a public institution. And the Cité Internationale des Arts has been created with the main idea that mobility and making the artists from all over the world meet at one place for several months is a key element in your artistic and intellectual construction. So one of the oldest residency center and one of the largest in terms of capacity, because we have 325 studios to welcome artists. So that means every year we are welcoming in residency more than 1,000 artists from all over the world. So you understand that the situation today is quite crucial for us and very, very complicated, but on the other hand, very interesting, even if we do not have for the moment answer or solution. So we have this situation as a residency center, but there is another point of view we need to keep in mind, is that moreover the residency has become more than ever a central, a crucial element in an artist's career. In a way, many artists are building their career and their economy from residency to residency, from country to country. Since the last 20 years, when we are looking to CV of artists or to portfolio, we are always paying attention to the residency they have been selected. So we know that this one has been selected to the Rex Academy. We know he has been in Japan to Kujuyama or to Kamogawa residency. So we know he has been in Soma in Mexico, and it's definitely now a kind of key element in the background of an artist today. So now the question facing us today is therefore twofold in a way. On one hand, what model today for the construction of an artist's career? How can an artist today can build this career without this key element, the issue of residency, and it's an issue of artistic development and economy too, how we can manage this. And on the other hand, there is this other issue, what is the future for residency center? What new model should be built in a way? Because after this crisis, we were all talking about it will be another world after that. It will be not the same. We need to be more sustainable. We need to work together, but we definitely need to say that the residency model is based for the moment of something with very individual. That means an institution select an artist and invite the artist to come for one residency. So maybe it can be a key things to talk and to think, and this is the model we are trying to create on the French territory. So with other residency in France, residency in Poitiers, like la Villa Bloch, residency in La Rochelle, Centre Intermonde, and with resident and artists from the Outre-mer territory, like the one in Guadeloupe, in Martinique, because this is a French territory, so we need to keep that in mind. So it's the kind of thing we are working on, and we try to, and I hope we will work with other residency centers in Europe first to maybe try to create program together and to make the residency more sustainable in on the ecological field for nature and everything, but for the economy of the artist too. So that means when we are just paying for a plane ticket, it can be very expensive and it can be a disaster for ecology. Maybe it can be great to think how we can share, how we can just thinking the way to move differently. And this is the first thing. I don't know if it's clear or if you want me to add something else.
It's great. I think I'm going to pause you there just so we get some more of the introductions, because I think what you've given us is also already the opening to the next question, as in the what next. But I guess coming to another one of the kind of cultural centers and elsewhere in this building, to you, Nora, can you tell us a little bit about the context here, or like who you are, how you come to be here, and also the context here at the Centre Culturel Irlandais?
So the Centre Culturel Irlandais is Ireland's cultural flagship in Europe, housed in a magnificent 18th century building, just 10 minutes actually from the Cité Internationale des Arts and Notre Dame, very close to the Pantheon. So right in the heart of Paris. The Irish presence goes back 250 years when the old library here was established, but the Centre Culturel Irlandais itself was inaugurated in 2002. So we're the first port of call for Irish artists and Irish cultural institutions wishing to make connections in France and on the continent here. And we showcase the work of Irish artists or artists resident in Ireland in our gallery, our mediatheque, our performance spaces, in our very large courtyard. And the artists we showcase generally travel from Ireland and they stay in the centre for a few days. We're very lucky to have accommodation on site for 56 guests. So as well as presenting work to international audiences, the Centre Culturel is a place of creation. We welcome about 40 artists, not quite the 1,000 of the Cité Internationale, but 40 artists in residence throughout the year, who make work that goes on to be shared with audiences back in Ireland, but also across the world. So mobility is obviously key in achieving the mission of the centre. I think it's interesting at the moment in terms of Ireland and Ireland's kind of in relation to cultural exchange at the moment, because at state level, the issue of global visibility and Ireland's role in the world has become a priority for the Irish government, heightened of course by the withdrawal by our neighbouring island from the European Union. But for example, this year, Ireland won a seat on the United Nations Security Council. There's a real push to increase Ireland's visibility on a global stage and to become even more connected to the rest of the world. And it's part of an initiative called Global Ireland, a strategy to develop or to double Ireland's global footprint and impact by 2025. The culture is obviously a part of that brief. We have an organisation called Culture Ireland. It's the government agency that works to promote Irish arts worldwide. It was set up in 2005, but more recently, the Department of Foreign Affairs, as part of Global Ireland, appointed a cultural director for Ireland and is currently recruiting 7 cultural officers in cities worldwide. I think in terms of the cultural sector and cultural exchange, Ireland is, of course, an island, unique in this panel discussion in that we're a small country, but an island. So national touring and opportunities for showing work, I suppose we don't have the critical mass in the country and that other countries have, like China or the US or France. And certain work, of course, is made in Ireland with national touring in mind. And I would say that over the past 15 years, there's been a significant investment by the Arts Council of Ireland in national touring networks. But I think now there's a growing acknowledgement and realization and even excitement that there's a whole world out there and that funding should be allocated for the production of work that's specifically made to tour internationally. So I think now more than ever, we really need to make those international connections that lead to touring opportunities for Irish artists. And equally, of course, our festivals in Ireland do great work in developing those partnerships with international co-commissions and co-productions, for example, which require mobility and exchange with international companies touring to Ireland. So it goes both ways.
Thank you, Nora. I'm going to move on just so that we kind of make space for further conversation to ask. So from that kind of island perspective to maybe a very central European perspective, Yuri, you talk to us a little bit about your context there.
Yuri, that's my name, isn't it?
I hope so.
That's easy in Czech, but I am not so common with English pronunciation. That's funny. Thank you. No, thank you a lot for invitation. That's great to participate with you to the discussion about our points, what are common and different, maybe also. So I'm the director of Czech Culture Center in Paris. The institution was created in the middle of 19th. And we are 26, 27, because there are all the times the new centers what are opening in the world. So 26 actually in the world. Mostly the Czech centers like institution are situated in Europe. For example, 2 in Germany and very few out of Europe. So, for example, we have only 1 in United States, in New York, only 1 in Asia, two in Asia, no center in China, for example, no center in America, Latin America, etc. So I think it can be some kind of view for what is our international question or issues for Czech culture. Then the second point, what I think is very important, Czech culture or Czech institution is representing a specific context of multinational region in Europe, that's Central Europe. So my quite large question is if historically the place of Slovakia, for example, has his place in our institution, or what will be about the issues of Jewish literature in Prague and so on. So this is, I think, some kind of specific questions what we are having here. My position of mine is to be really open to every proposal what are in the context of the specificity of the Central European culture with the Czech context, but not necessary. So the question of minorities, the question of nationalities, and so on, they are very, very open. Our specificity, and I think that's one of common point with my colleagues here also, we have quite nice building, very well situated, 10 minutes from Sorbonne. I think we are 15 minutes from Cité des Arts. maybe 20, but not so near like Ireland Institute, but not so far also. And where I am developing this point because actually with the problems with the mobility of artists and so on, we are developing a quite large project about a Czech concept store, like a new place when you can find and buy also, so present, exposed, but also to find and to have the new design creation and applied arts. And we made very, very well experience with Czech ephemer, so Czech, not how to ephemer in English, I'm not sure how to say it. So a library, just 1 month's library here in Czech Center. So that was before holidays, and that was a really great project, I think, because we had a new public who came here just to have the access to the literature, because that was not possible to have really the actors and the writers and so on. So just maybe for the end, we are promoted all kinds of culture, what we can imagine. I think that's common points for all us. And I am very open to everything what is the transcultural context. So for example, music and theater and literature together and so on. So I think we are trying to really develop the new kinds of cultural presence and projects. And maybe our the most interesting things is Jazz Club, Paris Prague Jazz Club, and it's a really musical scene of Paris from one town. But Paris Prague Jazz Club for the moment is closed. So.
I think one of the questions you raised there, which you said felt specific to you around kind of cultural identity and diversity, and actually I think that's is something that's going to be very important for all cultures and countries, and particularly at a moment where maybe borders feel like that they're a little bit more closed, what that means for diverse identities. And I guess we've been talking a little bit in a European context, but it's great to have Caitlin here as well to look at the Canadian context with its huge diversity of cultural experience within your borders. Tell us a little bit about your context, Caitlin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I sort of wear 2 hats, because I am both the director of the Canadian Cultural Centre as well the cultural counselor for the Canadian Embassy. Our cultural center is actually located within the confines of our embassy. This is a sort of new thing following a series of renovations. The cultural center, which had been previously standalone, merged physically to within the embassy. The plus side of that means we have an absolutely gorgeous modern space. We have a 160 square meter gallery and a very brand new high-tech concert and film space. And it's funny because the modernity of where we are currently located belies the roots that the Canadian Cultural Centre has here in Paris. We're actually celebrating our 50th birthday this year in 2020. So the one sunny thing in 2020 is so far the Cultural Centre's birthday. It's funny, I'm having a bit of envy when I hear Sandro talk about the vast network of Italian cultural institutes, because the Canadian Cultural Centre in Paris is in fact the only Canadian cultural centre in the world. Many of our diplomatic representations have cultural programs, but we are the only centre, we are the only space that is dedicated specifically to culture, with a team dedicated specifically to culture. And like the Italians, we do report to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or Global Affairs as it's now known. Unlike, for instance, what Nora was mentioning, there is no one sole organization in Canada whose sole mandate is to promote Canadian culture abroad and to support touring of Canadian artists of abroad. There's a whole network between our Canada Council for the Arts, which is our granting council, funding coming from Global Affairs Canada, funding coming from our Heritage Department, some federal level funding because we are a federation, which just always adds a fun level of complexity when artists are applying for grants, as well as a creative export strategy aimed specifically at touring and exports. So it's a bit of a different map in how we operate, but what's quite special about the Cultural Center is that we really are the diplomatic arm of this. So our mandate and our role is not just supporting exports and supporting artists in and of themselves, but showcasing Canadian values and showcasing the diversity of our cultural landscape. And that diversity really comes from the fact that we are a nation built of immigrants. So there's so many different influences on the Canadian cultural scene, as well as the very, very growing importance now of Indigenous cultural interlocutors, from visual arts to cinema to dance to music. That's something that's really, really growing. And it's important that we are here in France because, as Nora was saying, Ireland is a tiny country. Canada is a huge country, but with a pretty tiny population, all things considered, and quite spread out. So international touring is very important for Canadian artists, and in particular Francophone artists, because when you look at what the markets are for Francophone artists, then that shrinks even further from the global market. And I think we have an important role to play in supporting that touring and that work abroad as well, and offering that voice in our walls. You're on mute.
I'm trying to be good because I do have some background noise here. So thank you very much, Caitlin. And just to complete our introductions, Aušrine, can we come to you? Tell us about you in Lithuania, where we meet you today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, my name is Aušrine Žilinskienė, and I work for the Lithuanian Culture Institute. And yes, in my case, good afternoon to all of you colleagues, panelists, and everyone beyond the screens. Goes from Vilnius. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be a part of this roundtable, and I expect today from my inspiring colleagues exchange of good practices, ideas, and insights. The Lithuanian Culture Institute is a rather smaller institution with very limited resources, or if we use this politically correct wording, with less resources, and as our country itself. And we work from Vilnius, and having no branches beyond Lithuania. So we started with 4 Italian institutes in France, went through 1 Canadian institute in the world, and ended with no Lithuanian institutes. So it's quite diverse. We have witnessing how diverse is the world. But on the other hand, we strengthened our capacities by building very tense collaboration with a net of our cultural attachés residing in different countries. For the moment, in 12 and responsible or active in 15 countries. So we have programs and budget which is allocated in our institute for cultural attachés activities. And the attachés as such are very supportive of designing and implementing our projects and programs in the countries of their residence. My colleagues in Paris should know Madame Austė Zdančiūtė, the Lithuanian cultural attaché in France. She represents Lithuanian culture here in France with both passion and professionalism, of course. What's also maybe interesting to mention that we are accountable to the Ministry of Culture, not Foreign Affairs, not Foreign Office, as many of my colleagues does. So, and that's why maybe our mandate is quite clear. international cultural relations, exchange, mobility, partnerships, and we concentrate on professional culture, so on professional art, more or less. So no language teaching and less cultural diplomacy. So it's quite clear mandate for us. Maybe coming back to exchange of ideas, what I mentioned, we all witnessed in the time of crisis, in the time of pandemic, the ability of the creative sector to adapt quickly to new reality. And I have to say that in Lithuania, the cultural life is quite vivid. And during the summer and beginning of the autumn, when the restrictions were released a little bit, so we experienced many cultural events, festivals, and so on. So, but with less international cooperation, with less international participants. So, and in our job in the Lithuanian Culture Institute, and for cultural attaches activities, the mobility of artists is essential. And and we talk about the mobility not because it's about ability to travel for the artist. It's not only about traveling. It's about exchange of ideas. It's about co-production, co-creation, the developing as an artist. So it's a very important issue. And and I see here the biggest challenge, of course. And I think that our work now, work of cultural institutes, as such, is very important to speak loud, to speak up the importance of international cultural relations and exchange, and advocacy of the value of the international exchange. So we have to think about what's next and about how we will keep the trust and the spirit of cooperation and exchange in the after-pandemic world. And when borders, physical borders, are opened, if we also remove our borders in our head and so on, it's many interesting questions to talk about the future of the cultural exchanges. And I think now a meeting today is a good example of doing it in the right way. Thank you. Thank you,
Oistrine. And I think you've introduced us to maybe kind of the next question, really, because so acknowledging that you do have so different contexts, different reporting, whether it's to a Department of Foreign Affairs or whether it's to a Department of Culture, whether it's a mix of promotion abroad, so a kind of economically driven, or whether it's cultural diplomacy. You have a variety of different contexts, or indeed in the case of Vincent, sort of not that specific context, but actually dealing with the next level of those, the kind of consequence of those consequences. How are you responding to this the current situation? You've had this cultural policy context, and you've had to be part of the response. How have you managed?
I think this question was to me.
Yes,
I can continue.
Start with Oistrine.
Yeah, thank you. Let's start from this point that governmental policy, at least in Lithuania, but maybe in the Europe and the world itself, in the time of in the crisis, turned towards a national approach, more or less, putting funds, special measures in place to help the local creative culture sector to deal with COVID. So and of course it was less resources for the international corporations. natural way, because it was less need on that in 2020, let's say so, or in time of lockdown and isolation. So, and it's very important to work further, to develop further this essential and very important question about the exchange of cultural relations, about cultural, international cultural exchange. Even if in the moment it's not possible to meet live to each other, they have not to think only about today, they have to think for the future. And of course, you know that we are all very, very creative in a sense, as we work for culture, you know, we have to be. And we developed new products. We developed new digital contents and put on the web, and adapted our programs, our cultural products, their services to digital environment. So many things we did already. And I think that some of the instruments and some of the schemes and models we introduced or examined in the COVID time, in the pandemic time, will stay for future. Will be used in the future as well. So it's about sustainability. Of course, we can talk about it later, but the adaptation of the programs it could be used also when the life is more or less back to normal. Of course, some instruments can be used in combination with the live activities. So and such interesting things happening already when we have a panelist partly in Zoom, partly in the room attending the conferences or events live. So it's new reality, and we learned so much from the time for our future.
So you're thinking about blending sort of virtual and live. Any of the others, what kind of examples? Yes, Caitlin.
I absolutely agree with a lot of what's been said so far on the digital transition. I think to us, the Canadian Cultural Centre was able to quite rapidly move online. A little bit of trial and error. It's something that happened much faster than any of us expected us to. But for us, it was actually quite a wonderful opportunity because Canada, as you know, is quite far away. There's an Atlantic Ocean between us. Things like plane tickets are more expensive than coming from most places in Europe. And moving online actually gave us access to lots of fabulous artists in Canada that we probably wouldn't have seen in France. Be it artists that hadn't yet attained the international recognition to make it financially feasible to tour in Europe, artists that were normally working on other things. So we were able to actually have a much more dynamic program than we had initially planned, which was wonderful. But also for us, we're able to reach a much wider audience. You know, in person, we can have 100, 120 people at the Cultural Centre. You know, for instance, for June, when all of the Pride parades were canceled, we had a whole series of Pride Month activities showcasing these fabulous LGBTQ Canadian artists, for instance, to a much, much wider audience, both in France and internationally than we could. That said, a lot of the projects we had that we had been supporting around France had been canceled, had been postponed. I think we all dealt with the complications of many, many, many contract amendments. But I do think that we will continue moving forward, at least on a hybrid model, possibly even a fully digital model for at least the foreseeable future. Canada's borders remain largely closed to non-essential travel at this point, unlike those of some of my colleagues around the Zoom table here. That's sort of the looking back half. To me, the looking forward half, though, I have a lot of hope for what we can do digitally and virtually, and bringing together more international partners. But mostly what I'm hoping that we see from governments around the world is a renewed focus on cultural exchanges, cultural diplomacy. We have seen and we continue to see moves towards protectionism from various countries around the world. Borders are closed. Especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there were episodes of xenophobia popping up all around. And I think, to me, culture and sort of the dialogue that the culture and cultural exchanges and cultural diplomacy can foster is going to be so much more important and so much more essential in a post-pandemic world. And I really hope that governments around the world keep their focus on that, in spite of having to support our domestic industries. And I think it's important that we recognize that in supporting international exchanges, that also supports our domestic industries around the world.
Thank you. Usually, for you, what's the context? What's worked well?
I agree completely with my colleagues. The time what we are living is really some kind of challenge for all us. But I feel some kind of chronology also in the evolution. For example, with digital context, digital content, and the project, what the networks project by Zoom conferences or online streaming the concert from Prague and so on and so on. That was very well, for my point of view, maybe that can be the question for all of you. What very successful during the spring, I think in March, April, maybe a little bit less in May, that was working very well. But I think our public, my experience, started to be a little bit tired, but this kind of online participating, and I saw really some kind of shutting down the presence of this kind of traditional, but nothing was traditional, digital context. So it's something what I don't have a response for the moment, what kind of digital context we can really propose for our public. And just the example, our public is something like 10,000 followers on Facebook and so on. So I think during the summer, maybe now in autumn, in winter, one more time, the public will come and will stay at home and will follow us by internet and so on. But I made this experience that maybe culture needs really the human contacts. And this is the question, the second point, and our responsibility for me, like a director of Culture Center, what is not need really the commercial objective, so we can organize something without have the profit of it. That's the difference between the classical theater or some music club and so on and so on. And our role is try to be really open, to stay open, maximally open to create the occasions for the really human contacts. But in this case, now what's this, and we are all responsible also for the sanitary protections and so on. So this is something what we will try now in October and November, try to stay open, to invite the people, to visitors, to friends, come here, malgré tout, how we say it in French, but not only focus on digital or internet contents, but both questions are very open for me for the moment.
Thank you. Nora, I think you wanted to come in there.
Yes, thanks. Well, I'd agree that there are producing digital content is complex, and first of all, there have to be very high production values, I think, to produce something that holds the audience's interest. We had a project in the Centre Culturel in June, which I'd just like quickly to talk about. It was every June in France, there's this Fête de la Musique, National Music Day, and it's one of our most important events here in the centre. Over one evening, we might welcome over 9,000 people to the centre. So my challenge was, how do we obviously had to cancel that, and how do we then replicate that, or how do I felt I had to market in some way. So I came up with my team with a virtual project called A Song Just For You. And this project was, we invited 40 artists, because I suppose I needed to think carefully about my motivation for this event. Obviously, maintaining the visibility of the centre, supporting Irish artists, which is really our principal mission. And anyway, in the end, we invited 40 artists to perform for 20 minutes, but not to 9,000 people, but actually to one person or to one household. So we used a Zoom platform. We welcomed our 40 audience to join us in this big virtual room. And then, of course, via Zoom, you can disperse people into their own private rooms. So on this platform, we had 40 private sessions happening all at the one time. Now, it really was, like, as Kathleen was saying, it was really, a lot of the time, this was for us a real experiment. I mean, even it was our first time to use Zoom, so we were all terrified, but it worked. And what I was amazed that a digital experience could have such an impact on audiences, not just audiences, but actually also the musicians. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read you just a quotation from Vanessa from Brazil, because of course we reached people, we had people applying from all over the world for their own private concert. It was kind of a lotto system, so in the end it was just 40 households who won, but we had people from all over Europe, South Africa, Zambia, Indonesia, Mexico, Costa Rica. And Vanessa from Brazil wrote, afterwards, she said, "I want to thank all the CCI crew for one of the best experiences of my life," which I just found incredible. "I've been a fan of Irish culture and music for more than 25 years, and A Song Just For You gave me the opportunity to listen to many artists I didn't know, because we shared a lot of the videos beforehand online. On your Facebook page, I watched many videos from the artists and fell in love instantly with Cry Monster Cry. I put them as one of my 3 top options and was very happy when I discovered they were my chosen artist. It was my first contact with their songs, and because of you, they have a Brazilian fan now. They were very friendly. They played 4 songs and we had a nice chat. I wish I could go through this experience again. It was incredible. I'll be thinking about that moment for a long time. I'm still amazed by the event. I can't believe how lucky I was." And to me, we've had that kind of phenomenal feedback. And I just thought, for a digital experience, it was eye-opening for me. So I think, that we must move with the times, and technology, we will have to adapt and use technology in clever ways, I suppose. And that was just one little experiment for us, but I'm sure that we will become more and more reliant on technology. Now, very quickly, I'm reminded of an experience I had in Paris, which was the Maria Callas hologram tour. So I am not suggesting that there was a live audience, but Maria Callas appeared on stage as a hologram. I'm not suggesting that we go completely digital. That was a very bizarre experience. But I think, we've a lot to learn yet. And the pandemic has really accelerated our learning and our need to reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you, Nora. I think as a performing artist, I guess it's not surprising that I would say that one of the important things about art is its liveness. However, digital work can create experience of liveness, because we've also been at live performances which feel dead. So it's not just people being in front of you that create that experience of liveness. And liveness isn't only about the performance being live, but the kind of liveness it creates in the spectator or the whoever. But I think that liveness is a really important part of connection, and it can be achieved digitally, but that's not the same as making everything digital. Vincent, just maybe before we come on to that question that Nora has started to open up, maybe that, but that you addressed maybe earlier on, that it's not just about pandemic and health conditions, but it's also about a wider sense of sustainability, and maybe sustainability balanced also with this idea of kind of justice and inclusion and supporting lives to be sustainable over long periods of time. How are you managing that? Because digital, I guess, is not the thing today.
No, it's very interesting, because what we are facing today at CITE is, for the moment, we use the technology and the digital issue to promote the artist. But the thing is that a place like Cité Internationale des Arts, the concept of this place is to say that what is important in 65 at the beginning, and I think it's more relevant than ever, what is important is to meet people who are not like you, who are not from your discipline, because we are a lot talking about multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity. But today, if you are looking in the most of the residency center and program, there is only one or maybe two disciplines. It's very rare to have a place where all the disciplines are welcome. So the most important in the residency is to meet people who are not from your discipline, who are not like you, who are not with your background and with your knowledge. And that's why what we try to build at CITE is to give the possibility to the artist to meet people they will never have the possibility to meet. Just one example, we work with more than 100 partners from all over the world, private and public, and we always try to build different kind of programs. So that means we can work with a famous art school in the States or in a university, and we can work with an association who is trying to promote the art of First Native. So that's the thing, because we want to make these artists who will never have the possibility to meet today in the real world. So that's I think it's a very important issue today, because I think we need to give, in a way, a safe place to the artists today. A safe place, that means we need to give the possibility to have time, to have money, and to have a space to work. Having a studio today, it's more expensive than ever. Having grant and everything, it's so complicated, and having time where you do not have a time without no job to get money or something, but just to think and to talk about your creation. So during this last month, what we try to do is to give the artists the possibility to promote their work via Zoom, via talk, meeting, on our website with Zoom and events. But I think maybe what we are trying to build now is maybe program who gives time, money, and possibility to travel. But that means we need to rethink the issue of time. We need to say that an artist needs time. A residency is not 1 week residency. We need to give the possibility to have the mind open, to have the possibility to reshape everything and to just open. And I think it was you, Osrin, what you were talking about. We need to advocate for the issue of mobility, the issue of international mobility, and how important it is to go abroad and to meet people. So I think I don't know how it will work, but it's not the opposite of sustainability. I think we need to work on this and to create a real sustainability on an artistic, social, and political level.
And Sandra, if we just come to you again, I mean, you've talked about you're actually in a position to be able to support artist mobility, artists coming to France. Now, maybe coming from Italy to France isn't that kind of huge distance, but it is crossing borders. And we know that any political borders at the moment, you know, for health reasons and political reasons it can be complicated. What's your sense of the future? How much travel, how much displacement and mobility and exchange do you think is going to be possible for you to continue to support?
Anyway, it doesn't depend of us to manage totally this problem. We try to be optimistic, and actually, since we try to keep our mobilities as usual, if I can say, and even we have a small program of residences of artists at the institute. We try to keep it, even if it's suspended during the summertime and at this beginnings of autumn, because we are waiting how the things are going on. And as Nora said, and all my colleagues, that try to explore and to use different type of support and media became necessary. And for example, I'm talking for the network, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, to support like a new production, because during the pandemic time, several new production that they couldn't came out like in a regular way to the theater, and that you have like a regular tour and circulation through the theater and the regular events calendar of events. So they thought they were organizing like a grant that included the realization of a video made like in a very good weather. So I mean, like not like self-made. I mean, like that it will be part in a different way of the expression of if a performance group of the group, if there's a musician like part of the like a traditional video clip. So will be like a way to get public to support artists and try to facing the problem of the lack of mobility. But on the same time, we try to do our best to keep this mobility, because we think it's very important, because you feel the feeling was very strong after the lockdown. This you lose the sense of community, and even you feel the losing this the community, the sense of community of the artist. So not only the event facing the spectators, the public that make like the very right or the very big event, but you really feel you need this participation, co-participation. And on the other hand, if you can say, when Vincent was telling us that it's very complicated to have a space as for working, a big space for working in a town like Paris, is a paradox. But this situation can help, because you can be everywhere, and with a different type of media, of tools, you can be get by the person through a camera, so in your studio. So also at this point, it could be a point of reflection, of thinking. I mean,
it's interesting, because I sense sort of there is across the group a kind of range of experiences in relation to the digital, both the kind of like yay and it's been great, and also it doesn't quite you know, there is also fatigue in audiences.
Yeah. I think so. I think so. Yeah, there is a big fatigue.
So what in the longer term, how do you think we will cope with that fatigue? How do you plan to manage it?
Well, what's very big, how we can cope with this fatigue? Well, maybe in a very banal answer, we try to preserve part of the public and try to keep the regular with the social distances, whatever, for those part of the public that's risk less, if I can say that. So at least could be like a compensation for someone, and also actually will be part of our program in November, and even for the next beginning of the year, to think more to the young public, that because you said like the risk and presence are less than the old public, and probably for the young public, it is a need of participation, like to live together and experience could be even more important that for like the mature public, that he's already had like a lot of experiences. So of course there is a lack, but maybe it could be like a longer break. So it's just, you said in Italian palliative, it's just something like to face on temporary, but it's thinking like to go back in a better time, or not back, or like just to go in a better time, just that, to cool.
How about for the rest of you, a kind of sense of going back, Kathleen?
I was very inspired by Nora's A Song Just For You event, because to me, that is something that bridges the whole gap between the live experience and the togetherness and the contact that is so important both to culture and to diplomacy, while staying in the digital realm, and this amazing bespoke experience that was created. And that to me is the kind of thing that we all need to be thinking about, to be able to create contact, create exchange, create something unique while staying in the digital sphere for as long as we can't properly do things together. I think, Nora, I am envious. That is amazing.
I'm sure the idea is free to with crediting. Actually, I think just one, I'll come to you just, Oisrín, in a second. What just comes to my mind in relation to, I guess, cultural diplomacy is maybe there's a historical model of cultural diplomacy, which was a sort of broadcast model where, you know, a government state sent its message and its single message abroad to be transmitted. But obviously now we're in a very different age where we've been used to that it's about contact between people, and it's a variety of messages are going out and are coming back. It's exchange. And maybe one of the risks of lockdown is that by cutting off all of those more regular contacts, that the exchange becomes thinner. And maybe now the challenge is how to find those ways to maintain that richness of exchange. So it's not, you know, the single message being broadcast, but that exchange between people. Oisrín, you were talking as well about that.
Thank you. I also wanted to react to what was said before, so very shortly maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to Jerzy, what was said about flow of digital content, and it's sometimes too much and maybe not very effective. And I think it's the quality of the content is most important everywhere, and it's the same as with the digital content. If you have a high quality content, interesting, attractive, it cannot be boring. It should attract, or it can attract, and even broaden your audiences. So, and what Nora said, it's that in some cases, the new approach, digital approach, gives also new possibilities for our institutions, for our work. So, and it reminds me on our newly experience with a project for the London Design Week, we participated in digital showcasing, in digital gallery, where 13 countries showcased its selected design collections in the Adorno Digital Gallery. And the collections provided a unique insight into the design communities, what's so diverse in the world, and attracted very broader audiences. And I think sometimes that the digital platforms can be more democratic in the way. In this case, when we think about the big fairs like design fairs or like things, when all the countries compete in square meters, expensive solutions of exposing the or lightening of the exhibitions, and the countries with less resources, as I said before, sometimes we lose in that. And in digital gallery, in digital, we compete rather with the artwork, and artwork itself are pointed out and not the expensive cover. It not can be used in for every experience, but in that platform we got very good attention from audiences and from the media. So it's quite very positive experience in that way. But of course, it was very good quality 3D exposition and so on. And back to Vincent, what a wonderful residence you have. I wish some Lithuanian artists to experience that in the post-pandemic world maybe. Or but I have to agree with you that. Maybe in that way we have to rethink, or there were so many mobility schemes developed in the recent decades in the world. Maybe it's a time to rethink a little bit how the mobility is developed or should be developed or organized or supported. Maybe it's not so much about quantity of artists traveling in the world, or maybe it should be more about quality of meetings, quality of partnerships, quality of, I don't know, of experience and so on. So it's what Vincent pointed out, what he said before. So that's my short remarks on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ostrina. I just want to come to, I think it's a moment we should maybe just open up to some of the questions that have come in the Q&A. And there's one very specific one, which is really to ask you, what are your first steps to remodeling your cultural program in the current context? I mean, it says the pandemic context, but maybe that sort of wider context of sustainability and pace. Yuji?
I read the question, and that's really good question, and that's not easy to have an answer. And I think that's the improvisation all the time, because we are doing like tomorrow or in 10 days we should reopen, and all the time that's not possible. So, but for me the answer is there's the improvisation with in the positive way of this term.
And
before the call.
That's all right. But can I ask you, as a performer who improvises, there are often so there's all the improvising, but there are often structures or values or principles that are supporting. What are your kind of principles underneath that improvisation?
Yeah. So, for example, for us, what is really important is to cooperate a little bit more with, for example, Czech artists, not from Czech Republic, but from France. Is the first. Too many calls all the time. To have the artists from not only from Czech Republic physically, but also from France. That's one point of view. And the other one, we try to propose the Czech Culture Center for the not residences, but like a place of repetition for musicians and theaters, who are situated here in France, and they are working with one topic of Central culture or Czech culture. So these two ways are going quite well, I think. But the condition of the possibilities of traveling are changing all the time. So I think the improvisation is mostly there, because for me, the objectives is to let come the Czech performance artists and so on here in France and try. And that's true, because I think my colleagues, you are all very optimists and positives. I am not so, but a little bit, or maybe. But what is really interesting, that actually we are cooperating much more with the French Institute in Paris, like that was the case before. So that's true, this situation, pandemic situation was very positive in this way.
Would anyone else like to speak to how you are taking those kind of first steps in changing your cultural program or adapting?
Probably one of the main point will be like to support more like innovation, research, like to escape, because we are more able to escape from something traditional, that if I can say that. So, and also, as you said, like improvisation should cope with some pillars of, and also with the quality that the Lithuanian colleague was talking about. So this is so probably the innovation in terms of research could be like one of the, because we are also very obliged to do it.
Kathleen, are there things you're escaping as well as things you're embracing?
Yes, indeed, and I'll be brief, but this is coming back to conversations I've been having with my team over the past while. Is we're really shifting how we measure success as well, right? Up until now, our performance indicators were very much based on numbers. How many people have come to the cultural center? How many people have we reached in how many different cities in France through things that we're doing elsewhere? So we're really seeing a shift in sort of more qualitative assessments of what defines our success, both in the digital sphere and in as we start doing things in person again, which I think that is probably a bit of a sea change that will last beyond the pandemic context, is the way we look at our effectiveness. And just in the short term, we're doing visual arts exhibitions with no artists, which is a completely different way of doing things that we're absolutely not used to, but you know, is not necessarily a terrible change. It just is a new way of doing things. But I really do think that how we look at who our audiences are and how they interact with us will be a long-term shift here.
I'm just going to move to the next. I'm going to just move to the next question, which I think is probably quite a specific question, as in focused on you, Vincent, about Cité des Arts. But can you respond to this question, which is around different ways of, or different partnerships that you might use in that kind of residency situation? What examples are you working with?
Yes, thanks a lot, Pascal Krief, for this question. And it's true that it's one example of the new program we succeed to build during the crisis. We knock at the door of many partners, like the Centre National des Arts Plastiques, le CNAP, and we say to them, okay, we are in a very strange period. The artists and all the person working in the field of creation and art needs to get a support. And even if the mobility is not possible, we can focus on the artist or the curator or the professional who are located in France. So we build, for example, 2 programs, and one of the programs is the one with the CNAP. We launch a call for application for curator and art critic living and working in France, but from all the nationality. There is no limit, no age limit, no nationality limit. And we succeed to have the funding to propose 5 residencies, 6-month residency with a monthly grant for this curator. So that means during 6 months, they have the possibility to live and to work here at Cité for free with a monthly grant due from October, because the selected candidate will arrive tomorrow. So 5 curators at Cité. We are very, very happy. And we are, since maybe with the project we have created for Cité, with the direction, Bénédicte Alliot, the director, and all the team, it's a new program, and we succeed to build this maybe thanks to this crisis. And the thing which is very good is that we built this program in 1 month. It was really did in an emergency. It was the first time, and we are very happy to know that it will be, and there will be a second edition in 21, and we hope this program will be working for several years. And it's one of the, maybe it's not the only, but there is very, very few programs in France for the curator and the art critic. So we are very, very happy with that, and we thank the CNAP for that.
But it will be it will be a program in presence, so it will be a program at the Cité des Arts.
Yeah, because that's why it was only open for the moment for curator and critic living in France, because the issue of mobility.
Yeah, I see. Like to cross the problem of international. Okay.
Yeah.
Cross the border. Yes.
There's another question actually which sort of builds on that idea about virtual residencies, but I just want to, before we go to that, maybe to ask those of you that are working really in that government context with that idea about, you know, innovating quickly, trying things, that isn't always the way that government responsibility works. And even those of us, you know, even if you're reporting to, we'll say, an arts council, which isn't a direct a government body, but there's the things around accountability. How are you navigating the kind of opportunities to be innovative, to have different measures of success, while at the same time dealing with the sort of state systems of accountability? I'm going to ask Nora. Put her on the spot.
Thank you. I think we're in a period of such uncertainty that it's not a question that we can really answer at the moment. I think it's too early. We're still firefighting. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. But I think, I suppose, just in terms of change, you know, I had mentioned that change has been accelerated and forced upon us. And what we have learned from the pandemic is that a global solution is required. And even in terms of mobility moving forward and how that impacts the cultural sector, you know, how do we create large touring networks? Do we, I mean, certainly residencies will be crucial. So people aren't traveling to deliver a lecture or a performance of just one night, a one shot. But if we're saying that that artists can only travel if there's a tour in place, well, that's very restrictive, and there's a danger, just as you mentioned, Fergus, that it becomes very structured and very restrictive. And where then is the space for younger, maybe less established artists? Where is the space for kind of fringe events for those? And then I think, picking up on a point that Ozrina made, of the democratic nature of the internet, you know, that's maybe, you know, I think, so I'm quite interested in those two. They're parallels, they're the kind of structured touring network, but there's a danger in that. But then also the idea of the democratic nature of the internet, and that is a tool that actually the good ideas, they win out.
And I will offer you a balance there, Nora, at the risk of offending my host. And no, it's not offending, but I guess the challenges are that there is, as you say, the kind of structure of a touring model and the democracy of the internet, but also the tyranny of the algorithms that direct you in one direction, the direction that you're already on, and then the opportunity for good curators to introduce people to things that they wouldn't expect to meet already. So in a way, the challenge is to keep that openness alive, regardless of the, you know, whichever the live or the medium. Maybe we should just come to that question. So there's a question from Audrey Keane about virtual residencies. Has anyone thought about exploring? So I guess the idea of how people could show up in that space. Sandro?
Well, that could be an option, the virtual residencies, but you mean like you mean like the artist stay in his workshop and yeah, we try to show them what he or her doing. So yeah, could be an option. Never think about it. So because I'm totally affected of this lack of connection that can be real, but yes, could be interesting. So think about it, probably because one of the main points of the residencies is to give time for the creation. So in this case, you avoid the problem to cross the border, and probably you can grant, sustain the activities of an artist in his place. Probably even the selection could be the same. Instead of coming in Paris or a different place, could be in its own place. Why not? Yeah, it's an idea. Yeah. Thanks for the for the person who asked about it.
There's a longer question then again about, which is I think around the challenges of travel, the lack of sustainability. But I think the ultimate question is, could we ask for specific government schemes and funding to train up institutions and artists for the new digital age? How is sort of digital skill, how is that impacting on your work? Do people have the skills? Do you have the skills?
No, really, we are exploring, but have to be honest on that. Yeah. So it could be a very good point, like to improve these type of skills. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. This is very, very good point.
Yirish, did you have a?
I don't have the exact response like everybody, I think, but we don't have so big and deep experience, absolutely. But I am really observing what is happening in education area, because that's, as it can be also some culture area if you want, but I see in Czech Republic, but also here in France, that if can we do the education only in digital area, if is it possible or not. And I think this year and last year we will have a lot of experience, exact experience what will be happen with young people, with young generation. And I think with that experience we can much more be exact what is possible, what is the culture transmission, what is the changing of personal if the person is all the time alone at home, but he's receiving education or culture things. So I think for the moment on the government or Czech ministry level, there are really not responses, but there are many experiences with the education area. So we need some time, but I think it can be very inspiring for our reflection also.
Kathleen?
I'd be curious to hear from my colleagues from other countries. I know that one of the pandemic responses that our Canada Council for the Arts put forward was in fact, a partnership with our national broadcaster to support artists going digital and offering digital literacy programs. There is a digital strategy fund. Much of this was the domestic response to the pandemic, which doesn't necessarily have an overt international angle, but I would imagine that many countries in their response to supporting artists would also be orienting their work towards helping with that digital capacity building. I hope.
I can speak for the Arts Council of Ireland and say that certainly for organizations, there is there is a capacity building fund, and one of the streams of that is around digital capacity. In kind of recognition that it's not just about knowing how to use Zoom, but it's also about contracts and about the rights that go with all of that. Because of course, one of the big challenges in this digital space is also how to make it financially sustainable. We can reach people, but to go back to kind of Vincent's question around sustainable careers. How do we make that sustainable through this way of engaging? And I'm not expecting Vincent.
Yes, because there is question about virtual residency, and I think this is what we are in a way talking. During this last month, we begin to talk with two partners from two different countries, because before the lockdown and all this health situation issue, we were talking about a partnership and a cross residency between institutions and different countries. And during this month of lockdown, we begin to talk about the issue, how we can work on a virtual residency. And I need to say that for the moment, we definitely don't know how it can work or develop, because we were thinking about, okay, we can build and create a 6-month residency. We can set up meeting with Zoom. We can set up kind of workshop with Zoom and everything. But at one point, we were both saying the partner, but there is something missing. There is this issue. The artist needs to meet. The artist needs to meet and needs to, in a way, be together to produce something and to understand really the context of the context of living of both artists. If you are living in, I don't know if you are living in Dubai and if you are living in Paris, it's not the same. And if you've never been to Dubai, you cannot imagine how it works. You cannot imagine the daily life and everything. So there is, for the moment, I don't know about this. I need to say that we work on this with several partners from all over the world, from a small group of partners, but I don't know. At one point, we have and in a way, it's an issue of sustainability too, because it's only the issue of residency, not the issue of promoting or making the work circulating and everything, but does a residency online can be sustainable? I don't know. Today, I don't think so, because I think there is a lack of something. There is a lack of meaning, maybe, because I think we need to interact physically and in different kind of context. But it's not a definitive answer, because I think we don't know for the moment.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm going to draw it to a close. I'm going to draw it to a close here. We're just running over time. But before I do, I would just kind of want to do maybe just a quick roundup from each of the panelists. Just one sentence of maybe something that you've thought about today in this conversation, or something that you're going to take away, something that struck you, but just one sentence so that we can pass through. I'm going to start with you, Nora. Sorry, you're looking away from the camera. Don't notice me.
What do I say? One sentence. We need each other, whether it's in the flesh or virtual, and we need artists. And we need to support artists.
Thank you. Oisrín.
Oh, it's quite difficult to wrap up with one sentence. So to win some time, I want just to make a short remark to Vincent, because we experienced already some virtual residences between Somerset House in London and Lithuanian Rupert residency. So it's already some models exist. How successful they are, I have to check. So yeah, one sentence. I think we have to keep collaborating and partnering. And sometimes it seems that life stopped and we are, so to say, in a corner. But we find ways to meet each other, even if it's only on the screen. And maybe it's fine, because it's not necessary to travel thousands of kilometers for 2 hours talk in Paris from different countries in the world. Let's stay sustainable and meet more efficient, more time-resuming. So yeah, start to meet often, start to discuss, exchange, and the future will be bright.
Thank you, Ashwini. Yuji.
Very well pronounced.
Got there in the end.
I think we have a lot of responsibility for the artist and culture, for the intercultural dialogue, and maybe that's really for me, that's something what is on my heart every time. We had, like cultural institutions abroad, we have many responsibilities to keep on the dialogue between cultures.
Sandro?
Yeah, if you are obliged to use only the net of course I enjoy of the democracy of the network. We have to find out the best way to support the artist. This is the point.
Vincent?
I definitely like to sum up all the things that I think we need to support the artist and to rethink some model to be more sustainable, and we need to work together and to be together to create this model.
Thank you. And Kathleen?
I feel very inspired by this, actually, because I really do think that in a post-pandemic world, artists are going to be a huge part of rebuilding and helping rebuild the links between people, between nations. And seeing all of the folks around the Zoom table today who had all these really cool ideas and really interesting and inspiring concepts on how we can go virtual and what that means for the future of creation, makes me very hopeful for the pandemic / post-pandemic world and the future of artist mobility.
Thank you. Thank you all for your contributions today, to FICEP for kind of creating this context, and Berenice and the team for sort of making it all possible. And if I could presume on behalf of artists to say, it's really inspiring to hear you talk about that kind of faith in and desire to support artists. And I guess the next step is to make sure the conversations happen, that enough of them know about your openness, interest, so that we can all work together to kind of create this new set of possibilities. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks to you all.
Thank you.